Hi, I'm Aquarius Kane and I'm with Accelerated Learning Services, and today I'm going to do a tutorial on factoring trinomials when the leading coefficient is not 1. This is something where students kind of struggle with, so I'm going to break it down into 7 easy quick steps, and then we'll do a practice problem, and then you'll be able to practice it and do it on your own freely. Alright, so let's begin. The first step is to make sure that the trinomial is written in the correct order. Okay, and when we talk about writing it in the correct order, we're going from descending, which means we're going from the highest power to the lowest power. And keep in mind, a trinomial, tri means 3. So a trinomial means that we have 3 terms in this particular polynomial that we're using. So for example, we'll have 3x squared plus 2x plus 1. So we have 3 terms there. That makes it a trinomial. And notice how my terms are in descending order from the highest power to the lowest power. Okay? Step 2. Decide if the 3 terms have anything in common. This is called the greatest common factor. So you're going to look at the coefficients in front of each of the terms, including the constant, and you're going to factor out the greatest common factor. And don't forget to include that as a part of your final answer. So when you factor it out, it's not like you just deleted it all together. You're going to make sure that it stays included in that part of your answer. Okay? And we're going to do an example step by step so that you can see this. Step 3, multiply the leading coefficient and the constant. Okay, the leading coefficient, if you are not sure, is going to be the number that is right in front of the first term. That's your leading coefficient. Okay, and your constant is going to be the last term that does not have a variable attached to it. So you're going to multiply the leading coefficient and the constant together. That's your first and your last numbers. That's step 3. Step 4, list all of the factors from step 3. So if I multiply my 3 and my 1 together, I'm going to list all of my factors. Okay, and then I'm going to decide which combination of numbers will combine to get the number next to x. So I want to look to see which numbers I'm going to combine to get this number right here. That's next to x. Basically, the coefficient that is in front of your middle term. Okay? So again, you are listing all the factors and deciding which combination of numbers will combine to get the coefficient of your middle term that's next to x. Step 5, after you choose the correct pair of numbers, you must give each number a sign so that when they are combined, they will equal that number that's next to x, sign included. But in addition to when you add them together, they must equal this middle number, okay? But when you multiply them, they must equal the number that you found in step 3. This will all make sense when we do the examples. Step 6, you're going to rewrite the original problem with 4 terms by splitting the middle term into the 2 numbers chosen in step 5. So basically, the factor that you came up with, that pair of numbers that you came up with in step 5, you're going to now substitute it for your middle term. Okay? That's step 6. And then finally, step 7, once you have rewritten that problem, then you can factor each portion out by grouping. All right, so those are our 7 easy steps to factoring a trinomial when the leading coefficient is not 1. So let me show you how to do it step by step. Okay, so let's look at this example. And the example says, factor 6x squared plus x minus 2. So remember, step 1 says that to make sure that the trinomial is written in the correct order, where it's written in order from descending, where you have the highest power going to your lowest power. But this is already written in descending order. So step 1, done. Step 2, says decide if the three terms have anything in common. So our terms are actually, when we look at them, we have 6, 1, and -2. Okay? So when we look at our terms, none of them have anything in common outside of 1. So in this case, this is of no help. So there's nothing for us to do in step 2. So step 2, done. Then we go to step 3, which says to multiply the leading coefficient of the constant and multiply the leading coefficient and the constant. So remember what I said about where your leading coefficient was and where your constant was. Okay, the leading coefficient is the number in front of your first term. Your constant is your last term that doesn't have a variable. Okay, so I'm going to multiply 6 times -2, which gives me -12. Step 3, done. Step 4, list all of the factors from step 3 and decide which combination of numbers will combine to get the number next to x. Okay, so we're just going through and figuring out, how do I get 12? Well, if I multiply 1 times 2, 2 times 6, and 3 times 4, those are all the combinations of getting 12. All right, so that's it for that step. And what we want to do is we want to look at decide which combination will combine to get the number next to x. So if we're looking at the number that's next to x, that number is going to be a +1, because remember, if we go back up, I pulled out all of my numbers here. So we have 6, a 1, and a -2. So we're looking at which numbers we're going to combine together that are going to give us a +1. And in doing so, that's going to be a 3 and a 4 that are going to combine to give us a +1. Okay, so we're looking at these numbers here, and we're deciding, if I combine them, what's that combination that's going to give me a +1? And that's going to be your 3 and your 4. So step 4, done. After you choose the correct pair of numbers, you have to give the sign so that when they are combined, they will equal the number next to x and multiply to equal the number that we found in step 3, which is our -12. So if we do a -3 plus 4, and we add that together, that gives us a +1. And -3 times +4 gives us -12. So those are the number combinations that we're going to use. We're going to use a -3 and a -4. That's going to give us a +1. Okay? So step 5 is actually done. See, we're moving through these steps really quickly. It's not that hard for you to do. Now, let's move on to the last 2 steps. We're almost done. Step 6 says rewrite the original problem with 4 terms by splitting the middle term into the 2 numbers chosen in step 5. So remember, the 2 numbers that we chose were -3 and +4. So I'm going to rewrite my plus x as -3x plus 4x. So I'm just going to do a substitution. Okay, so x itself is going to equal -3x plus 4x, because if you combine them together, that's going to give you a +x. So all I'm going to do is substitute this into my equation, the 6x squared plus x minus 2. And instead of the plus x, I'm going to have a -3x plus 4x. If I did it, it's still going to be a +x. So I'm just rewriting it using a different term that equals the same thing. Okay? So far, we really haven't done much. Step 6, done. Then the final step. Now that the problem is written with 4 terms, you can factor by grouping. Okay? So I'm going to show you that step by step so that you can see what we did. So we have 6x squared minus 3x plus 4x minus 2. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a different color. I'm going to group them The first two terms I'm going to put in parentheses and group them. The last two terms I'm going to put in parentheses and group them. And now I'm going to factor each part. And in order to factor, you've got to, again, we talked about the greatest common factor. So I'm looking at my 6x and my 3x. I know they both have an x in common. Okay, so I'm going to pull my x out. And they both, 6 and 3, have their greatest common factor is going to be 3. So I'm actually going to pull out a 3x. And what's going to happen is when you pull out that 3x, it's almost like saying you're dividing by that. So I'm going to divide both numbers in that set by 3x, and that's going to give me what that factor is. So if I divide 6 by 3, that's going to give me 2. If I divide x squared by x, that's going to give me x. Okay, my sign remains the same. And then 3x divided by 3x is just going to give me 1. So if I factor 6x squared minus 3x, my answer is 3x times 2x minus 1. Now let's move over to the last part. I'm going to add a plus sign here. Okay. Then we have 4x minus 2. Okay, both of them don't have an x, so I can't pull an x out. But we have 2 and 4, and 2 is the greatest common factor that they have in common. So I'm going to put that on the outside of the parentheses. Now remember, whatever I pulled out is almost like I'm dividing everything by that. So 4x divided by 2, 4 divided by 2 is 2. Bring my x down because I couldn't do anything with that. My sign of my minus sign stays the same. And then 2 divided by 2 is going to be a 1. How do I know I'm at the right spot and I've done this correctly? The fact that what I have in my parentheses is exactly the same lets me know, yes, I am on the right track. So we're going to finish this problem up. And the way you do that is everything that's outside of the parentheses, you're going to combine that together in the parentheses. So we have 3x on the outside and we have our plus 2 on the outside. So when I rewrite that, that's going to give me 3x plus 2. Okay, and I'm going to put that in the parentheses together. Now my 2x minus 1, since it's the same for both of them, I'm not going to rewrite that twice. I'm just going to do it one time, 2x minus 1. Okay, and that's it. We've completely factored that problem. There's nothing else that we need to do to it. And if we go back and look at the answer that is here, our completely factored answer, 2x minus 1 times 3x plus 2, is the same thing that we got here. Okay? Oh, went down too far. 3x plus 2 times 2x minus 1. And so that is how you factor with the leading coefficient when it is not a 1. All right? I hope that this helped to answer any questions. If you need us for anything, if you need any more tutoring with Accelerated Learning Services, please don't hesitate to give us a call. I'm going to put our number up here in our website. So you can reach us at 404-933-2235. You can visit us on the web at www.alstutoring.com. And if you want to visit us on Facebook, you can do facebook.com/ALS Atlanta on Facebook. And remember, we are Accelerated Learning Services. Don't forget to contact us, share the video. I hope it was helpful for you. Leave us some feedback as well. Thank you so much for watching. I hope again that this was helpful for you. I'm Aquarius with Accelerated Learning Services. Bye.